From the BBR studios, we're coming at you live but recorded, talking about all things racing and just a little touch of a little more.
Just a bit.
Yeah, I'm your co-host, Chris.
And I'm Corey.
And we're going to get you up and revving today.
I'm going to wow you.
I'm going to wow you.
I'm going to wow you is what I'm going to do.
So what's on the agenda for today?
Well, we got our normal, we've been doing this so much and so long. We got our normal format.
And we've actually got some viewer mail from last week's podcast.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild since we did that like 4 hours ago.
Yes. No. This is a week later. Come on. You know better than that.
Don't believe it. All right. So the first matter of business is we got to talk about news and tech.
News and tech. What is new in the news?
Well, I tell you, I'm pretty impressed with this, but there was I think it was a PDR race. Turbo Ton Moyer, he took his 2014 Jerry Bickle race car, and it's an updated build to 363 in the eighth, which doesn't sound impressive at 220. Doesn't sound impressive.
So 220 miles an hour in the eighth mile.
That's 660 feet, baby.
That is impressive.
But after qualifying was finished, he went 358 at 227.
So even faster. Jeez. Gosh.
What the hell?
Wow. Can you imagine what that would look like if you were a 10-second car and you raced against him and you took off at the same time?
So I'm a 9-second car, and my 9-second passes were like 567.
Yeah, so he's 2 seconds.
2 seconds ahead of me.
And even 2 seconds doesn't sound like a lot.
He has enough time to eat a sandwich.
Yes. 2 seconds faster is incredible.
People don't really understand the perspective of it. It's wild. I would love to see the time slip to figure out what his 60-foot is, but I'm guessing it's sub 1 second.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about that just a little bit. So you got these guys out there that think hey, I've got a Hellcat or I've got a Z28 or something like that, and they go out there, and those cars come from the factory with 12, 13 seconds maybe. Maybe I'm being generous.
That's fast.
That's fast. But when you compare it to one of these other guys that are doing this.
So let's try to compare that to, like, let's see, 358 in the eighth, which is just absolutely insane. I would say that would be a low or middle 5.
5 in the quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't do the math. This is totally
off the top of your head.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the comments will tell me how wrong I am, but I would assume that would be somewhere in the lower 50 or 5 range.
Yeah. And that's, even if you're going against a 10-second car, that's half as fast. No, or twice as fast, I guess. Twice as fast as.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You could probably read a book by the time you got there. 10 seconds. But, what's cool about it is the reason that he was able to make this, and this is actually a record, is because he decided to change combos. So he went from a 96 millimeter turbo, and he converted it to 88 millimeter turbos, which gave him a 100-pound weight break, which, you would expect a little bit more speed from that 100 pounds, and he was able to pull it off. I mean, that is an insane time.
So you think that the 88 millimeter turbos, when it comes to millimeter size, are we talking that they're?
It's an inlet, so the size of the inlet. So he went from 96 millimeter to 88.
So
millimeter.
He was actually sucking in less air,
technically, but the way design and implementation, they figured out a way to make those more powerful.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And he got 100 pounds off.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the theory is that for every 100 pounds, it's a tenth. But I wonder if you're at this speed.
Hey, no, at that speed.
I was going to say, it's going to be different at that speed.
Yeah, at that speed, every 100 pounds is probably like a 0.02. maybe.
For us, 3,000, 3,200-pound cars doing 10 seconds, 9 seconds.
The average rule makes sense.
Yes, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the next news thing is Tony Stewart. He had an interview about drag racing versus cup racing, which I found very interesting. And if you want the actual references to this, look on the show notes below, and I'll give the links. The last one was off dragillustrated.com. This one is off of sportscapedia.com. And Tony Stewart was asked about the differences between cup racing, and he now runs a top alcohol car, and he basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, that it's a lot smaller operation, and obviously as personnel, it takes to do a NASCAR race versus it does a nitro or top alcohol. And he said right now TSR has 25 or 26 people just for the nitro team versus the cup teams had 385 people at SHR, which is insane to think about, to run one NASCAR. Well, I'm assuming he had 2 cars, maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
To run 385 people to run that operation.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And he goes on to say it costs less money to operate a nitro team at the level it needs to be done, when they say that, it's not cutting costs, but on the NHRI side of things versus Cup, it's at least half the cost of running a full-time Cup team.
And the thing about it, he's pretty damn competitive.
He came out, because I was kind of watching the videos on, I don't know if it was Hoonigan, or there was some, I'll try to find the videos and link them below, about him running his top alcohol car. And he made some great references about how difficult it is to run in a drag race, because the amount of mistakes that you have are very, very small that you can make and still win. So that was interesting. Observation that everybody knows, but it's interesting coming from a guy that was so successful in NASCAR to recognize that how difficult it is to actually win, because our type of racing is one and done. That's it. You make one mistake that you can't recover from, and you're done. Now, granted, top alcohol, what he's racing is more of a heads-up style versus index. So you can sometimes you can lose at the line but still win at the stripe. That's not how they're doing it.
Yeah.
But still, it is impressive or interesting that he would make, at least his correlations. And, I appreciate him giving our sport a little bit of credit.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A lot of people think going in straight line's easy. And sometimes it is.
So let's touch a little bit on, and we just touch just a little bit, because just our viewers or listeners, they may not understand if they're kind of tuning in. They don't know much about the drag racing aspect. The difference between index racing, bracket racing, and heads-up racing.
Yeah, we could probably go into an entire discussion.
Oh, yeah, and we will.
And that's probably going to be a future episode, and we already are very episode heavy on this one. But, the whole idea is we have to, in drag racing, have some kind of parity. In NASCAR, they have the stock car, meaning they have so many rules to make those cars the same speed to where it's parity, right? In drag racing, because a lot of times if you go heads up, it's who has the most money wins.
Exactly.
So in drag racing, we parity it by either weight, if you're doing heads up, or we do index or bracket. And index is obviously the track tells you what time you have to run, and bracket means you tell the track what you're about to run. And it's just 2 different ways of operating, a racing program. So, it's so complicated. I would say 98% of the work on a drag strip, drag racing, is done in the pits. Easy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then on the flip side, half the work at NASCAR is done in the pits. The other half's done by the driver, and
Yeah. So there were some new rules coming across for drag racing and the NHRA, and one of the things that you are going to have to switch, I'm not going to have to switch over yet.
But you will.
But I will. Is if your car is going over 150 miles an hour in the quarter mile, then they're requiring you to have an additional safety requirement.
Yeah, new rules for 2024 is you have to run a Hans device if you run 150 miles an hour or quicker, or 749 in the quarter.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you'd get there without going 150 miles an hour. So I'm not really sure why that was specified. But 150 miles an hour, I'm running that in 9.
If you run 749 in a quarter mile, I would think you'd be up in the 170s or 180s.
So a lot of times they'll specify a mile per hour and an ET, because turbo guys, they'll mile per hour faster. but run a lower ET. So, but this doesn't make sense because it's the actual opposite.
Yeah.
You're actually, the mile per hour is slower than the ET predicts. So I have no idea. I think it's just to make sure everybody's running a Hans device. So with that, you know, if you're running 150 miles an hour, it doesn't matter. If you're running 749 or quicker, it doesn't matter. You're wearing a Hans device. It takes effect January 1, 2024. The SFI rating needs to be restarted every 5 years, and it also requires modifying your helmet because the way the Hans device mounts, it mounts to your helmet. So you either have to drill holes or whatever your current helmet, or you have to buy a helmet that has the Hans device included with it. Mm-hmm. And also it needs to be restarted every 5 years. So you need to add it to your implementation of your recert package, which, you know, every 5 years is your transmission for the most part. So if you kind of get on that same program, or at least what I try to do is stagger them so that every year I'm recerting a couple things versus a bunch of stuff at one time.
And this Hans device, this was actually developed through NASCAR racing, I do believe, and a lot of it became more popular after Dale Earnhardt lost his life.
Yeah,
he was wearing an open-faced helmet.
So prior to that, they were pushing it on NASCAR, and a lot of the older drivers didn't want to deal with it.
Dale did not want to lose the open-face helmet. And
let's also be honest, you could wear an open-faced helmet and still wear a Hans device.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with that. It's just your visibility is limited because you can't turn your head.
Yeah.
And in index and bracket racing, that's a big deal because a lot of guys will turn 90 to figure out where the competition's at, and you're not going to be able to do that anymore.
Yeah. So both of us are going to probably be going. Well, you definitely are going there next year.
I've got to be.
Yeah, we'll follow you.
The NHRA gods have spoken. So I'll be wearing one. I mean, I'm not disappointed. It takes a lot more effort, and sometimes it almost requires another person there to be with you. Because once you get strapped in and you get it, the Hans device goes over your shoulders, and then your seat belts actually go over the Hans device. So depending on how much room you have to get in the car is dictated by whether you put your Hans device on beforehand, and you can get to it. But if you're sitting in the seat ready to get suited up or get strapped in, you may not be able to get those pieces onto your helmet. So it may require another person if you're going to go over 150 miles an hour, or just a modification to your starting procedure, you know, or your line procedure. So just it's a big news. I mean, you could probably go, depending on the type of racing you're doing, you know, at 950, you could almost run 150 with a turbo. So, you know, you're knocking on it. You know, at 9.0, you're pretty much winning the 150s. So all of us are going to be wearing that. You know, at 10.0, for the most part, you all don't have to. But I would. I mean, honestly, an 11.5 second car or even a 13-second car, what's $500 from dislocating your spine from your back?
Well, I can tell you, I can tell you, the fastest I've been in my car in the 10.0 class was 137 miles an hour, and I broke the 10-second. I can't imagine hitting the wall at 137 miles an hour and not hurting my neck.
Shit happens fast.
Yeah. So it's a worthwhile investment to do regardless.
Absolutely.
So we're going to change gears just a little bit, and we're going to go to viewer mail.
No, we're going to topic.
No, we're going viewer mail because I want to start with that one first.
Really? We need to end with it, I thought.
I'm pulling a
rank? Because you're the host and I'm the co-host?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Well, I said co-host.
No, you said host.
No, I thought I said...
The first one you said
Did
host.
I say coast?
Comment down below.
Coast to coast.
I'm fairly certain he said host and I'm co-host. Hey, I'm fine with it because I need less responsibility, not more.
So we got two mails that we're going to talk about. And
so these are viewer mails from the podcast.
From the podcast, yeah. And if you do want to write to us at linelockedpodcast@gmail.com.
Or comment below.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Wherever you find this podcast.
Yes. So we're not going to name the names of people who's wrote these. The first one is, Corey, I love your truck, and I love the color you guys are going. Tell us a little bit more about the cars that are sitting behind you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So obviously my truck is below, and number 4020 right there. And I went blown alcohol last year, and still working through that. And I was successful towards the end of the year, not so much to the middle, but that's how growing pains work. Runs 9.0 pretty consistently. or 870s, according to Bubba.
Yeah.
And we're looking for that 850 index, and I'm real proud of it.
Yeah.
Hand built. What about you, Chris?
Well, I run a 64 Nova. I started racing last year, and we bought it from a guy in North Carolina, and we kind of trusted on what he said it was, and come to find out it wasn't what it was. But our best I ran last year was 1132, and that was naturally aspirated. And then this year, I inherited Corey's old blower, and now my fastest time is 980, but I run a 10 index. So it's been a great, worthwhile time of learning how to tune a roots blown vehicle and get a little faster. We cannot go any faster than 10 seconds right now, in case you ask, because it doesn't have the chassis to go 10.0 or faster than 10.0. So we're kind of stuck there for the time being. Now, this other car, if you can kind of see over here, this purple car, this is one of our good friends. It's Dalton Ryan, son of Mike Ryan, who owns Performance Automotive, him and his dad, Gordon. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing to that, because this is one of our shop projects.
Yeah, so this winter, and if you found us through the Blood Brothers Racing YouTube channel, I am changing the front suspension out. It had not originally, but what brought to me was a Mustang 2 suspension, and there was problems with it about having full travel. And full travel. So it had about an inch of travel down, and it was hitting the lower control arm. And what I'm going to do is remove all that so that he has full 3 1/8 inch travel on the front end, and mount the motor a little bit further back, and then also do some firewall work in order to be able to make it serviceable. So that's kind of some wintertime work. It's on the Blood Brothers Racing YouTube channel, us working on that, or me working on that, depending on where you're at. And it'll be an interesting project. It's I'm not exactly sure what year. Do you know? It's a Valiant, but
I think it's a 64, 63.
It's somewhere in that range, but I haven't looked at no VIN tags, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe they told me and I've forgotten, but it's a really cool car just because it's different.
It's very unique.
Very unique. They call it Purple Rain.
Purple Rain.
Prince.
Yeah. So I got one more email here, and this one's to you too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Corey, I really love your new haircut. Every time I see you, I have hearts in my eyes. How are you just so handsome? Love, Mama.
Really? Well, I love you too, Mama. Come on, guys. If that's what we have to pick from, I mean, I love you too, Mama.
All right, so back on topic.
Yep.
We want to talk about some engine combos, the pros and cons of each one of these combos.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the most, more in the past than so much now because they're kind of changing, but small block Chevy seems to be one of the biggest to go.
It probably still is, really, just because parts are so easily available.
Yeah, so what kind of combos can...
So when I wrote this topic out, I was thinking more about, like, naturally aspirated, not any engine as far as brand specific, just naturally aspirated, which I call consensually aspirated. And then forced induction is the next set, which is blower or ProCharger, stuff like that. And then you also have nitrous. So those are the combos that are prevalent in drag racing or drifting. A lot of drifters use nitrous. It's the pros and cons, at least in the drag racing worlds, of those particular types of combos. We could talk about cars too, but I think that may be better for another podcast.
Yeah,
because that broadens a whole different thing. But let's just talk engine combos. Let's talk about, first of all, consensual
aspiration.
So
we're talking carburetors.
Or you could go into EFI too. That's fine too.
Yeah.
We're just talking about your basic.
Yeah.
Your motor that you don't have anything bolted onto. The pros, obviously, is less moving parts.
Yes.
Less things to go wrong, less things to tune for.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of it, if you're going to make a whole lot of horsepower, you got to make it all on the line. So you're talking higher compression. which could lead to lower runtime as far as engine's concerned. When you're running like 13-to-1 compression and methanol, that's harder on a motor than running 9-to-1 compression with a blower. So that's definitely a con. Another pro in my book would be consistency, because you have less moving parts, less things to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So that's another pro. And another con is you don't got anything sticking out of your hood. You don't even got cool stuff.
Yeah, that's
it doesn't
true.
Sound great.
It could be a real good sleeper.
That's true, but you can make a real good sleeper with unconsensual.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
So that's kind of, and if you're talking about bracket racing or even index racing, obviously naturally aspirated, if you can get to your number with that, that's probably going to be your best combination. There's less things to go wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, and exactly. If you're usually the things you change the most on a naturally aspirated motor on race day, getting to your number and stuff, is usually like jet size and timing.
And you don't really change that very often.
And you don't really change it very often. No. Once it's set, it's usually set.
For the weekend, for the most part.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're less work. A little bit less work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
just not as cool.
Yeah, it's not as cool. I mean,
it is what it is, but it also is a cheaper combination, another pro.
Yep.
Cheaper. And you don't have to worry about all the blower pulleys and everything else that you go along with non-consensual.
Non-consensual, which is
forced induction. And there's a couple ways of doing that. You got turbos, you got Roots blowers, you got Pro Chargers.
Screw blowers.
That's Roots. Screw. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Screw is the other one.
Yeah.
So I guess there's 4.
Yeah.
That's right. And all those combinations, they all kind of do it in a different way, but all of them, not all of them, 3 of them are turned by the crank.
Yeah.
And then one of them, turbo, is turned by exhaust gas. So let's just talk about turbo for a second. Turbo is turned by exhaust gas, like I just said, and it's almost like getting free horsepower. All that parasitic loss there, from blowers, it's not there. It's just, this is free horsepower.
It's kind of like using manure on the food you grow.
Yeah, I mean, it grows faster.
It comes up to exhaust.
Yeah, methanol.
You use it on food, and you eat the food.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's recycling.
Exactly like that, yes. I guess. So turbos are pretty cool. There's some disadvantages to that because you've got to get spooled up. You've got to, what is the button that you use the lurch in? It looks like your car is a washing machine.
It's called a bump, wasn't it?
The bump box, yeah. All that shit. And in order to get to the line, and it's no big deal. But that's a style, and it's cool as shit because you can produce a lot of horsepower off the parasitic just exhaust gases that are coming out, and you're not losing anything from. I say parasitic, I was wrong. You're not losing anything from the engine itself. You're just making exhaust gases make pressure to make horsepower. It's crazy. It's cool. But on the flip side, it's a lot harder to tune. So if you're going to go blow through carburetor, there's people that's done it. Street Racing Channel on YouTube, that truck used to run blow through carb, and he was fast as hell.
Yeah.
But most people go EFI, and that's probably the combination most people would recommend. So we'll go on to the next, which is Pro Charger Roots blower, screw compressor. All 3 of them are driven off the crank, and they're a little bit more manageable because you can use mechanical fuel injection to power them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a little bit more obtainable for most people. Turbos are pretty cheap, but as far as the power management side of it, if you're not going through blow through carb, you've got to get a Holly Dominator or something of the like, and you're talking $3-4 grand if you can get one right now.
Yeah.
With shortage and everything, but so you have that going for you, and they're cool as hell, all of them.
So is there any adjustment like on the turbos that there is on the blowers where you can just change the teeth on the?
You don't have to. What you do is just blow off excess pressure.
Yeah.
So you could tell a computer to do it, and that's kind of where I was getting at with the computer side of it. You could add dome pressure to a turbo and then lower your boost, right? But you have to do it with a computer. And in our style racing with the Nostalgia Drag Racing League is we're not allowed to have that. So, you know, you got to set your max boost pressure and then tune for it, you know?
Yeah.
So you got to deal with your bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, you got to deal with your bullshit. But those 3, Screw, Roots, Procharger, all driven off the crankshaft.
Yeah.
Most of them are very compatible with mechanical fuel injection, which I run in the truck, and it's pretty easy and pretty, I don't want to say cheap, but, you know, it's cost effective to get into. You can get into it not too terribly. So there's that. And then the last one is nitrous. And I hear that changes the man as well.
I think Fast and the Furious. Hit that NOS button.
Yeah, so you could easily hit that NOS button. They usually have a plate on the top of the motor. Most of the time they're naturally aspirated. Sometimes you add a little extra NOS to your unconsensual induction. But most of the time they're naturally aspirated, and you add nitrous oxide to your motor, and then you also add fuel. So you make your own atmosphere. And that's beneficial, especially when you're in a place that has terrible weather. You make your own weather, so you don't have to worry about it as much. And they are actually pretty consistent, bracket or index racing, if they allow it. Our particular league doesn't, but they're an option, and it's a pretty inexpensive way to add a couple hundred horsepower. You know.
Now, watching stuff like No Prep Kings and all that stuff, I noticed that when they go to like higher altitudes and stuff like that, the blower guys are dealing with density, altitude, and the weather changes and stuff. The nitrous guys don't, do they?
No. So the blower guys have restrictions on them. So they have an overdrive restriction, so they can't produce more pressure as the altitude goes up. They're restricted to this amount of overdrive. Mm-hmm. The nitrous guys, there's not. They just have weight restrictions. So they just add more nitrous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's the benefit of it, is if you go track to track, or even if you're on track, there's a lot of benefits to running that particular combo. But also, I've always heard that as soon as you build a nitrous motor, you build it broke. Mm-hmm. You continually change pistons.
Yeah.
You better buy spares.
Yeah.
So, nitrous is really hard on a motor. So that's a big con.
Yeah.
Really, really hard on stuff. But, you kind of got to decide what kind of avenue, what interests you. We like Roots blowers.
Yes.
Mainly because they're nostalgic, but also it's something my brain can understand. And I don't know about his brain, but I just know mine. It makes sense. I turn this mount and I turn the motor that amount. There's that amount of air coming through, and it's math. It makes sense to me. What do you think?
I think the same thing. I just like being able to be able to nail my numbers down where I need to nail them down.
And we were getting real close.
Yes. So, anyways, it's about time to wrap it up. But I wanted to see if you guys could do us a favor, and if you like what we're talking about, comment on our page and
tell us how dumb we are.
Yeah, exactly. So,
am I wrong about my assumptions about all these power adders?
Yeah. Hey, that's the thing is if you. And there's going to be disagreements.
Oh, absolutely.
You can almost guarantee there's going to be disagreements. But if you do agree or disagree, write us down in the comments or email us at linelockedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will be happy to dispute it right here on the air with you. So,
particularly if you get it on the ground floor. When we have 100,000 subscribers, we may have to sift through the best comments. Right now, Your comment's going to get addressed.
It will. Yeah, exactly. So do us a favor, like our page, subscribe to our page, and hit the little notification button on there so that you get alerted that we have new runs coming up. Every Sunday around 8 o'clock, we're going to have a new one for you. And we got some exciting stuff for the next one. And until then, this is Line Locked.
That's Chris.
That's Corey.
We are
Line Locked. Almost got it. Almost. All right, guys, take care now. See you next time.